morning, everyone. Welcome to this session on safety and innovation organized by the World Economic Forum at the Internet Governance Forum. My name is Agustina Calegari. I'm Digital Safety Lead at the World Economic Forum. I'm really pleased to have you today, and I'm going to be moderating this session. Firstly, I have to say that as part of the Global Coalition for Digital Safety, we have been reflecting on the importance of safety by design, because building safety into the design from the very start isn't just a good practice, it's essential for maintaining user trust and fostering responsible innovation. And that's why we are here today to hear from a diverse group of business experts. We don't have one, we don't have two speakers, we have 5 great speakers. So this is going to be a very interesting session. Let me start by introducing our panelists. We have Jeff Collins, Head of Global Trust and Safety at Amazon Web Services. I have Renato Leite, VP of Legal, AI, Privacy and Innovation at E&. We have Peter Stern, Stakeholder Engagement Director at Meta. Val Ricci, Global Head of Outreach and Partnership at TikTok, and Rafaela Nicolasi, Data Privacy and Consumer Protection Lead at OpenAI. So I know we have an hour only, and we have many speakers, so I want to start by asking each of our speakers a general question, because something that we focus when we work around safety or when we work around the Global Coalition of Digital Safety is on building common ground, building common language, because sometimes we talk about certain terms or certain challenges, but there is no agreement on what we mean by the things that we are trying to solve. So I want to ask the panelists, what does build safety from the start mean to each of you, and what is the biggest challenge that you face when you want to turn this principle into practice? So I think that I can start with TikTok there and then moving here. Well, is that okay with you?
It sounds great, thank you.
Good.
All right, well, first of all, thanks to all of you for coming, and thanks a lot to the government of Norway for hosting the IGF this year and for this panel and the invitation to participate. I think the topic of this is safety and innovation, and I think this concept of safety from the start is one that we're very committed to at TikTok, and it really means ensuring that safety and security are built into our products from the beginning by design. And in other words, what that means is that the product teams building things and the safety teams need to work hand in hand from development to launch. Now, for those who might be less familiar with sort of how things happen in the world of tech, the product teams are building TikTok or building the search function in TikTok. The safety teams are writing the rules and enforcing those rules across. And sometimes the product teams will do things without trust and safety involved, and that can cause problems. And so what we try to do is bring them hand in hand and work together. And the goal is to build responsibly products that help people express themselves and discover and learn and build communities. And we need to focus on minimizing risks when we do that. So when we're talking about building safely and safety and innovation, what does that look like in practice? Well, what it means is that TNS teams are working with our product and engineering teams to safeguard new product features and innovations as they are developed. So let me give you an example. We recently started testing a feature called AI Alive, which lets you turn your TikTok stories photos into videos. Now, as part of the development of AI Alive, our TNS team built a multi-layer moderation strategy to make sure that safety checks happen at each step of the way. And we added AI-generated content labels and metadata into the features so that people actually are aware that the content was created with AI. So another example of how we do this at TikTok is by really focusing on building tools and resources into the product that our community can use. That might include tools like content management or screen time management tools, reporting options, account controls, like being able to set your account to private and so on. Now, along that journey, it's hard, right? There's a lot of challenges. Unfortunately, you're facing motivated bad actors who are they're really intentionally trying to misuse the product at every step, and so you have to kind of take that into account, and anticipating all those misuses of products is not easy. But for a product like TikTok, which features user-generated content, one of the biggest challenges we face is balancing safety and fundamental rights like freedom of expression. We're firmly committed to finding that right balance, but it's not easy. Something like online hate, for example, can be highly contextualized and nuanced. It's really difficult to know where to draw the line, so sometimes efforts have to be a bit more reactive in those contests. So that's when we look at our community principles, our community guidelines, and outside experts to really help us build the system that works the best for our community. So we want to do safety by design, but we also have to recognize that it's going to be difficult as we go.
Thank you, Val. Peter, going to you. What does safety by design mean to Meta?
Thanks very much. It's great to be here. This is actually my first IGF, even though I've been at Meta for 11 years now. So it's really exciting and great to see everybody. I'm on the content policy team at Meta. I run a stakeholder engagement function. My role is to develop relationships with academics, civil society groups, other thought leaders who can help us inform our policies, including our product policies, to build better policies and get better results for our worldwide user base. I want to talk about how we think about safety, both in terms of policies and products. But first, I mean, I would want to sort of question any suggestion that safety and innovation don't go together or are incompatible. Safety is really at the heart of everything that we do, and it's always been that way. I mean, safety is one of the core principles that underlie our community standards, along with voice, dignity, and privacy. And we're always thinking about safety as we build our policies. This goes back a long time. I was involved in the rollout of Facebook Live, 7, 8 years ago now. And at that point, we faced a lot of novel questions about how we were going to moderate content, look in on live streams that reached a certain level of virality or viewership. Safety was obviously incredibly important then and continues to be now. So one way that we embed safety in our processes is by doing robust stakeholder engagement whenever we revise our community standards. My team maps out a strategy for who we should be talking to around the world, who's written or voiced an authoritative opinion about a particular policy area, and then we'll seek to engage with them to get their input and feed that into the policy development process. And by talking to the right people and fleshing out these views, I think we help to identify the impacts that we will have on our users, which I think is one core element of what goes into making up an approach to safety and something that's very important to us. The policy development process then concludes through a kind of a company-wide convening that we call the policy forum, and is then rolled out in the form of a public change to our community standards. That transparency, I think, is also an important element of safety that we'll probably be talking about more today. Shifting gears here, just because I know that time is limited for everybody. In the world of, for example, the development of our policies around AI systems, safety is also fundamental. You know, Meta deals with issues of safety and AI at a number of different levels. As I think people know, we develop our own foundational models that we open source and make available to others to use. We also create our own services that are fine-tuned for our users using AI. And then we host AI-generated content on our services. So at each of these elements, we have to take into account issues of safety. Are we using diverse and representative data to train our models? Are we providing information to developers who are using our models to create their own products so that they can build in safety and they have a sense of the guardrails that we think are important? And then how are we testing and red teaming and seeking to build in safeguards when we create our own products? And how do we identify AI-generated content that other people might want to put on our services in a way that people feel is giving them sufficient information, but not unduly intrusive? So lots more to be said, but that's a kind of an overview of how we think about safety in this setting.
Thank you, Pete. Jeff, we want to address a question.
Sure. First, thanks to the World Economic Forum for putting this together, and thanks for all of you for showing up. As someone who has been to many of these, and Peter's an OG in the trust and safety space, so I'm surprised you haven't been to IGF. But this is a pretty good turnout for late in the week, so thanks for coming. So I've been working in the trust and safety space for a decade, and this topic is really near and dear to me because for a trust and safety practitioner, really at the core of our work is to embed a safety mindset early in the design process. I have worked at a teen app called After School at TikTok, where people like Val are picking up on the work we started there, and now at AWS, cloud infrastructure provider. And for me, an important component and something I want to introduce to you here today is that we need to think about safety across the entire tech stack. A lot of times people think of trust and safety with respect to user-generated content companies like Facebook or Twitter, but it's really important that we understand across the entire stack how abuse can occur and how we need to think about safety often and early. So being at AWS has really widened my aperture in how I think about safety. As I said, we're a cloud infrastructure company. What that means is we have a large, diverse customer base. We provide the underlying technology for our customers to power their services and applications. So you might think of a cloud infrastructure provider as providing storage, but we provide compute, data analysis, AI, many other facets, and really we help power companies' businesses. Now, our customers from AWS, they are ultimately responsible for what they do in their AWS environment. So they're responsible for complying with laws, complying with our acceptable use policy. And what we try to do is to help empower them to build safe, secure, and trustworthy services and applications. So how do we do that? Our trust and safety team at AWS works to minimize and mitigate harms and mitigate abuse across the AWS network. And this could be things from security threats, something like a DDoS attack, to content abuse. Someone using AWS to put out illegal content like terrorist content, for example. Now, if we face true bad actors, a bad actor who compromises a customer's account and launches a DDoS attack, we will take action to mitigate. But if we have a good, trustworthy customer who has a problem, we really work to try to help them address the problem. We try to help them diagnose it at the root cause and then figure out how they can prevent it in the future. So as an example, we might dig into a case where there's ongoing internet abuse, find out that a customer didn't patch a security vulnerability, their account was compromised and then used to illegally mine cryptocurrency. In a case like that, we would work with them to understand what happened. And then there are a number of ways we try to help them prevent the problem in the future, really design safety into their product. So we can do that through guiding them to use AWS services. We have over 200 of our own services, and many of them are really useful in the trust and safety space. You may have heard of Amazon Recognition, which is image and video detection. We have other tools like Amazon Transcribe that can help detect and block language. And so we will guide customers to use those solutions. We also have AWS Marketplace, which is a way that customers can use independent software vendors' products in their business. So you might be familiar with products like Thorn's Safer tool, which is used to detect and prevent child sexual abuse material, or CSAM. entities like Cohere, Web Purify, CheckStep, those are all in AWS Marketplace. And then we also have a partner network where we have consulting partners with AWS like Accenture, Deloitte, Cognizant, and they help our customers integrate Amazon services like Recognition into their businesses. And then finally, we launched something called the Trust and Safety Center, which is a hub to provide information about how to report abuse to our AWS Trust and Safety team, how to troubleshoot certain types of abuse, and how to integrate best practices into your work. So I think I'll save AI for later, but that's just an overview of how we think about safety at our layer of the tech stack, where we are not directly putting out content, but we have a whole range of customers across government, private sector, civil society that are using AWS, and we try to work with them to help them integrate safety into their products.
Thank you, Chef. We are going to be talking a bit more about AI later, but now I want to give the floor to Renato.
So first and foremost, thanks for the World Economic Forum for organizing the panel, my fellow panelists. It's an honor to be here at the IGF. Just before, since we have such a crowded room, can everybody hear us okay? Everybody in the back over there?
Yeah.
Okay, I know it's a little bit packed, yeah. I know, so it's okay. Jokes apart over here, so just a little bit of an introduction. I work for EANS, and I know that it's not a company as famous as some of these companies over here in the Western world. I am based in the Middle East, I'm based in Dubai. So EANS is the holding company of a number of organizations that operate greatly in the region, North Africa, Asia, and Europe, and expanding to other parts. So basically, it used to be a telco that, such as many telcos in the world, is starting to attack, and it does everything. It does from infrastructure, internet services, satellite, cables, robotics, health, finance, payments, entertainment, even hotels. Every time that I talk to a team, I find something new that we do. And as many companies, it has also decided to turn into an AI-first company, and it comes to the challenge that we come over here. So going very specific to the questions, the first question over here, how do we see safety from the start, and what are some of the challenges that we see to turn into those principles, those that can be safe, into practice over here? Something that EAN saw from the beginning is that guaranteeing safety, what we call here responsible AI in the does not mean that you cannot drive innovation. Even if you see my title, I don't like titles of those who know me, but it's about AI, privacy, and innovation. The same time that you can promote AI and AI first, that you can guarantee privacy. Privacy is my main background over here. You can also foster and drive innovation. And that it goes on having a very well structured and loyal governance processes and policies inside of the company. We can talk a little bit more about that as specific questions, but one of the main challenges, we see a lot of companies doing that. We have a good governance and AI. We have a bunch of committees inside of the companies. Everybody has chime in. Everybody has a say. In practice, it's very, very hard. And so one of the main challenges that we see first is the lack of expertise. And I'm not talking about engineers, computer engineers that know how to do large language model, multimodal reasoning, and other things. All of the engineers that work at AWS and others doing this marvelous project that all of us use is basically saying, what is responsible AI? What is safety from the beginning? What is the things that you have to know in order to be able to build these safe products? So some of the first and also the habit of teaching is how to upskill people to know what safety means from the beginning. That when they are doing their day-to-day activities, when they're developing products, services, solutions, regardless of the sector, regardless of the area, if it is internet or not, they know what they're doing. They're not being saying, I'm just doing this because there is a policy that needs to be enforced. So this is something that we're working from the beginning. And that it means also alignment and communication among all of the teams. We need to have a really, really strong buy-in from the top down in order for the team to say, okay, we're gonna take the time in order to learn, in order to develop this, in order to follow these principles, this charter that was discussed, and that is also really hard. This is why we, going from challenges into some of the solutions, we rely a lot of automation. And this is something that I'm really keen of, is how we rely on automation and even AI for policy enforcements. So you discuss all the policies, you provide the awareness, education, the upskilling on it, but how to understand that there will not be some type of bypass most of the time because there is no knowledge of all of the processes that need to be followed. How you have AI even to help on that. And so, and this is what we call, just to finalize, not only talking about safety by design, but governance from design. So every single stage from deployment, from ideation, from development, from risk assessment, from deployment, from monitoring, it have a governance as it can be as automated and also can be embedded into the expertise of all of our employees. We can talk a little bit more about what we have been doing internally, but just from the challenges and how to turn into practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Renato. Rafaela?
Okay, last one to answer this question. I think my fellow panelists already addressed most of the things companies do to address safety by design. But I want to perhaps to start with a little bit of my background. I work based in Brussels. So one of the things that I do a lot is to engage with regulators all over Europe and beyond. So I wanted to answer this question through those lenses. And to me, building safety from the start means not waiting for regulation or crisis to come up. It has to be a proactive commitment. So it's baking responsibility from inception in everyday product, as my fellow colleagues here already said, and not treating safety as a after-the commitment or compliance checkbox, which happens sometimes when we see, like, for example, small organizations. I could speak about safety for many, many hours on this. We are almost like 20 minutes away, or no, we have 35. But I want to highlight 4 things that we're doing at OpenAI to bring this safety by design into practice. And number 1, it starts with what does it mean safety by design? One of the key documents that we publish, it's called Model Spec. I wonder how many of you may have seen that already. So it's this public commitment that set the expectations of how we want the model to behave, right? And grounded into societal values. So it's very inspirational. It's how we want our AI tool or models to really engage with society. Number 2 is doing risk mitigation. For that, we have something called the system cards. And the system cards is how we've identified, tested, and mitigated potential harms through bias, hallucinations, misuse, and so it goes. So it is basically what we do after we publish or release either a big model or a new feature into the things that we do. Number 3 is what I call threat monitoring, and that's translated into preparedness framework, another document that OpenAI released. And it really evaluates how, it outlines actually how we track, evaluate, and stress test what we call catastrophic risks, like misuse in biosecurity. And last but not least, to me, I think one of the most important ones that really speaks to my heart, which is being transparent about all of this, right? So everything we do, all of these policies, safety measures, how define what is risk, what are the risks that we think are most important that should be assessed by our safety teams, is shared openly. And the reason is to really invite critique, because we really believe that building safety is a collective effort, right? One example of this is Model Spec. We allow this for public consultation, for feedback for the general public for 2 weeks, and then we publish the Model Spec, the first version of it. And then goes to your last point of the question, which is, what is the challenge? And to me, the challenge is balancing the speed of how this technology is evolving so fast with the depth of the safeguards that we have to provide, right? So we know that sometimes regulation and enforcement can go as fast as how those paradigm shifts are happening in the AI era. So it's definitely how to balance those two together.
Thank you, Rafaela. Well, we have covered a lot already, but we have also here different practices and different perspectives from a term that could seem very straightforward. When we think about safety by design, we think that it needs to be embedded from the beginning, but what we have here different perspectives. And to pick up on something that we're mentioning here, firstly, we need to recognize that trust and safety is a space that is continually changing and is an evolving practice and an evolving discipline as well. And there were a couple of things that came up from the conversation that were related to building trust and safety, not only for users, but also within the companies. There was a need of working together with all the teams inside the company, but also with other stakeholders in terms of building interventions that embed safety from the beginning. And we also think the importance of not differentiating safety and innovation because they come together, and also picking on some of the points that Rafaela made about the importance of transparency and balancing the speed. So that's where we are right now, but now I want to go deeper into some of the things that you have mentioned. So I will do a follow-up question to each of you. We still have an hour, but we also want to allow the audience to make questions, so please be prepared for that as well. So I will start with you, Val, because I will follow the same order. And well, we know, of course, that TikTok reached a massive youth age audience. So what unique safety by design approaches do you employ for children or other vulnerable groups?
Well, thanks a lot. And, you know, it's funny because I think TikTok has this longstanding narrative and reputation as being a place that teens love. But I think a lot of people would be surprised to learn at just how broad the audience is on TikTok. In fact, for example, in the US, our average age is over 30. And my own feed is chock full of parenting advice and cooking recipes and content posted by grandparents. So, you know, I think that it's really important to think about the holistic audience as we think about safety, not just our youngest users. But yes, teens around the world love TikTok, and we know that. And so for years, we have approached safety by design relating to teen accounts differently. We build the strongest safeguards into teen accounts so that they can have a positive experience in a safe environment. So for example, accounts for teens under 16 are automatically set to private along with their content, so their content can't be downloaded, it's not recommended in the For You feed, and so on. Direct messaging is not available to anyone under 16. I'll tell you, that's really annoying to my 15-year-old who wants to direct message. Every teen wants to direct message, but the fact is we made a decision that direct messaging is one of the riskier areas in social media, and so for under 16, we don't allow it at all. Every teen under 18 has a screen time limit automatically set to 60 minutes, and only people over 18 are allowed to live stream. So these are some of the things that we have built into the back end to really ensure those safeguards are robust for our youngest users. What we want to do then is that you look at, so those are, like I said, back-end sort of product features, but we also want to empower our community, and particularly parents and guardians. So we're looking at a holistic response here, right? We give opportunities to give agency to our community. And so safety by design really doesn't just mean those back-end features, but also those other things that people can use themselves. And we recognize that every teen is different, every family is different. So we've continued to enhance our family pairing feature, which is a feature that allows me to link my account to my teen's account and set time limits and set times when he can't use TikTok if I want to. And that, I think, really allows parents some control over what their teens are doing on TikTok, allows them to block their teens from using the app at certain times of the day, for example, or setting screen time limits, and really helping families customize their experience beyond those robust guardrails that I already described. Finally, on this, we really want families to talk. Okay, I think we spend a tremendous amount of time, and we should, on thinking about what we can do in this space. We also talk with governments a lot about what they need to be doing and to support this environment, but we also see families and parents and guardians as critical stakeholders and in this conversation. And so we want to make sure that they're supported in having conversations about digital safety. We also know it's really hard to have those conversations. I have 3 boys, it's super hard to talk to them. They don't want to talk, or they want to talk at midnight when I want to go to sleep. You know, those things, it's difficult to start that. So we developed this digital safety partnerships for families, which is a conversation starter. And we built it through consultations with NGOs, through consultations with teens, with families, and got advice about what helps. Things like come with an open mind, be available when they want to talk. When things go bad, don't freak out. Right? So those types of advice that we put together, and you can download it on our website, and it's not TikTok specific. It's for social media generally, because we want to support families in those conversations. So that's a little bit about how we approach it. Thanks.
Thank you, Val. Yeah, we've been discussing with the coalition the importance of designing targeted interventions, because there is no one-size-fits-all interventions, and that we need to specifically look at a targeted group, children, and other stakeholders. And building also on your point on partnership, and also Peter on the point you made about stakeholder engagement, I would like to ask you to expand a bit more about how to engage with other companies or governments to align on evolving safety practices without undermining innovation, for example.
Sure. So, okay. So let me give you an example here that I think is illustrative of the practices that we're talking about. The issue of transparency and how we reveal that something may have been generated by AI to people is an extremely important one. At the moment, we take a scaled approach to this issue, and I want to kind of tell you briefly what our approach is and then back up and tell you how we got there, which I think sheds light on how we operate. So currently, we put watermarks, invisible watermarks on content that is generated using our own AI tools. We also will attach certain types of labels to content that people post on our services that have been generated using AI in part or in whole. And we also have in our policies the option to apply a more prominent label if we determine that content that has been generated by AI could be highly misleading and would be a matter of public interest, potentially putting people at risk. So that's sort of the bumper sticker version of what the policies are. There's a lot of nuance, but tracing back how we got there, we've had a policy on what we call manipulated misleading video. Manipulated misleading video as going back to 2020. And a case went up to our oversight board, which is an independent oversight mechanism that we created a number of years ago. And the oversight board told us some important things that we really took to heart in this space. One is that we needed to update the policy because it didn't cover enough different types of content. We thought that made sense. The previous policy was focused purely on video. They also said, interestingly, from the perspective of freedom of expression, that they wanted us to focus on labeling and transparency rather than taking a heavy-handed approach that would have involved removing a lot of video that was created or other types of content that was created by AI. We thought both of these inputs were very important, and that kicked off a policy development process for us. We went out and talked to 120 stakeholders in 34 countries to get their input on how we should be achieving these balances and drawing these lines. We also did extensive opinion survey research with 23,000 respondents in 13 countries, and we learned some interesting things. There was support for labeling. There was particular support for labeling in high-risk settings. And there was also a lot of support for self-disclosure, people putting labels on themselves, which is something that we also thought was important. So we took this all into our policy development process and came up with the approach that I've described. So already we're talking about multiple touch points with experts and civil society. But there's also an important industry component because in order to be able to identify content that has been generated using AI off of our services, we need to be able to interpret certain types of metadata so that we can then apply labels. So we worked closely with a consortium of companies under the aegis of Partnership for AI so that we could develop a common framework in that area. And we also used Partnership for AI's best practices in approaching our own solution on watermarking. So it's a work in progress. These are not perfect solutions. There are ways around many of these tools, and we need to continue to be vigilant about that. But the approach that we've come up with is broad-based, and I think is helpful in understanding how we're going to tackle these types of problems in the future.
Thank you, Peter. And following up on the AI aspect that you briefly mentioned, but also Chef mentioned before, Chef, could you expand a bit on how you operationalize safety by design, given the scale and the speed of AI?
Sure. I want to start by picking up on something you mentioned, Augustina. You said that trust and safety is continuously evolving. That's very true. We need to stay attuned to what's happening. But it's also very important to recognize we have learned a lot of lessons over the last decade as trust and safety practitioners, and we need to use those lessons in our work. With the really rapid ascent of Gen AI, I think what we have seen is across the tech industry, companies trying to figure out where they place trust and safety, how it fits in with responsible AI. Responsible AI comes from, its background is academia, and there's a lot of overlap between the two, but there's not a ton of clarity. So one thing I've tried to do at AWS is really make sure that we take this lesson over the last decade that Val touched on in the beginning. We need to break down silos, and we need to integrate some of our lessons learned from trust and safety into our work. So I'll touch on one thing that we do in the AI front. So AWS Bedrock is our service that allows customers to leverage foundational models from many different companies in their own work. And we try to make it simple for customers to integrate safety into all cycles of the AI process, from design and development to deployment to operations. So in Bedrock, we built in the ability for our customers to use a number of safety controls. These are things like input filtering to make sure that if you don't want to allow a user to be able to input something, certain language, say around child sexual abuse material, you can prevent that. Output filtering, PII detection and redaction. There's a host of different safety things or steps that our customers can take. And in doing that, they can kind of tailor their products, their services and apps to align with their own values. Something else we did I'm really proud of is we built in Bedrock CSAM detection. So we use hash matching technology to be able to detect potential CSAM in any inputs. And then when we do detect that, and we do it with a 99.9% accuracy, we block the content. We automatically report to NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is the clearinghouse for CSAM in the United States. And then we advise the customer. And the reason I mention all of those tools is because we developed those by having our trust and safety team work closely with our Gen AI teams. And I think this is similar. I don't work at other companies, but just having talked to people in the industry, I think they face similar situations where AI teams were working fast and furiously. Engineers who have been working on machine learning and AI for a long time to get products out. And we really wanted to make sure that we did learn this lesson from the past, that we need to be careful in not rushing things out too fast, but rather build safety into the products. With that said, I will say that this is still very new territory. As OpenAI well knows, the pace at which new models are coming out is just a blistering pace. And we're still figuring out across the industry what exactly safety means. For me, what I would like us to get to a point where, really going back to your primary initial question, where safety is considered a utility, where users and customers of AWS and others really expect safety to be built into products, and they're essentially demanding it. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jeff, and I think we can expand on that if there is time. But now I want to go to Renato to ask you a bit more about the regional perspective, and especially in a region with rising digital access and more regulations. So if you can expand a bit on...
Sure. So in the region, so mainly, even though we operate here in almost 40 countries, our main markets still the Middle East, so the Gulf region. And most of the countries, they either are just enacted some regulation, or discussing the regulation, or the regulation is there, but it's not being enforced. So there's not a lot of a stick to push people to do things. And that also brings something that I said in the beginning, the level of maturity in the discussions and the expertise on how to do things is still very low. I kind of compare. So I'm originally from Brazil, as Rafael is also from Brazil, and I see some Brazilian friends over here. You may remember when it was in Brazil, like in 2015, when we were discussing the General Data Protection Law, and it was very going to the basic concepts, the basic ideas, and it's kind of hard when you are discussing with the teams to, in order that we have to follow X, Y, and Z, and guarantee we say here legal assurance when there's this not level of maturity. So my team, the team that have opportunity to manage, oversees legal assurance for the entire group, for AI, for privacy, and for innovation, including intellectual property over here. And within this field of safety, and mostly talking about safety, not long ago, we developed a responsible AI framework. As a lot of companies do, we went there, we published, and I must say, we failed. And we failed because it was very beautiful, it was very colorful, shine a lot of there, everybody could go, you could marketing. But the principles that were there did not really reflect how the maturity of the region. It did not really reflect how the interworks of the organizations. So we said we need to come back. So we went back. We went to talk with all of the areas of the company, all of the verticals. We went to a lot of some of our main jurisdictions. We tried to internalize some, not only global standards, some regulatory concepts into this framework, such as explainability, which is not the same as transparency. And it might be something that we take it for granted in some jurisdictions, such as in Europe, when you're talking about that. But how to explain what is the difference between transparency and explainability, and how to build that into the AI solutions that we have internally and also provide a service, it's kind of hard. But then when you go to this understanding, so these are the key differences. It's not because it is in the regulation, because as Agustina said, it is a nascent regulation in the area, but not only because it is in the policy, but how that can not only drive innovation, how can only that achieve the goals of the organization. In the region, we are very much driven about reputation, about brand reputation, brand value. That has a big impact and also helps to get the buy-in from the different areas. and having an interdisciplinary review and assessment of all of the solutions that we have over there. So we also created an AI governance committee, which I'm a part of, but we even changed the mandate of the AI governance committee to the point to discuss it from the ideation phase. Are these ideas that are worthwhile pursuing from a business perspective, but what are the safety measures that we not only want, but we need to embed from the design before we put that out from paper and we start developing. So that's what I have been doing over the last years over there.
Thank you, Renato. You didn't only provide examples on MENA, but also in Brazil, so thank you for that. So, Rafaela, over to you. You already mentioned some principles that you are focusing on OpenAI. Now, I would like to ask you for maybe a concrete example on how OpenAI brings safety efforts into real practice.
Absolutely. So first, perhaps I can start bringing a little bit of context, so giving one step back about how do we see this fast-paced evolution of AI technologies. And many times nowadays, when you think about AI, I think most of us have in our minds the chatbots, right? Which are this AI technology that allows you to engage in network conversations. It gives you fast responses with prompts that you give to the model and so on and so forth. But to us, this is just the first level of AI. The second one that we were already talking about for a few years, we were calling that reasoners. And reasoners is basically AI that can think for longer. Is AI that would also have a chain of thoughts and will be able to allow you to challenge how it reached that response. And because you were thinking for longer, it got much, much better on addressing questions on the fields of science or mathematics. And when you saw that that was coming up, we saw that that would be a big leap in the capability, right? It would be a huge paradigm shift. And when we first introduced this to society, it was end of last year, around September. And we called this model O1. We know it might be a bit tricky to follow all the names. O1. And because we knew it would be a very capable model, we also wanted to ensure it would be the safest model we would have in the market. So we did 5 things to make sure that we're addressing those safety concerns to society, to regulators, to policy stakeholders, to go in the right direction. Number 1 was do very rigorous testing. So we conducted public internal evaluations to assess disallowed content, demographic fairness, hallucination tendencies, and dangerous capabilities. The second thing we do, it was to do external expert red teaming. I heard my colleagues already talking about it here, but one thing that we have very clear at OpenAI, especially because we're rooted in a research lab that started with a bunch of PhD together, trying to understand what the future of AI would look like, is that inside your own lab, you can't understand and assess all the risks. You need people from the external community to do that with you. And for O1, we had partnered with more than 10 external organizations all over the world to really challenge the model to identify risks that perhaps we wouldn't be able to see by ourselves. So that was number 2. Number 3, it was to bring more advanced safety features. So we implemented new safety mechanisms like blacklist and safety classifiers to really guide the AI behavior to prevent any type of inappropriate content generation. Number 4, I already said in the principles, but how we did this in practice, so it's showing the work. So we're very committed to be open about the model capability, how was the risks, how we're mitigating the risks, and then, of course, the publication of the safety cards that I invite you all to check it out if you haven't read them yet. And last but not least, what we've done as well was partnerships with governments. At that time, we had the US and the AI Safety Institute. We gave them early access to our models, so they would give us feedback. And that really allowed us to set the precedent before we release this to the public.
Thank you, Rafaela. Now we still have 10 minutes, so I'm going to open the floor for questions or comments. There is a mic this side, so if there are questions, I will ask you to to stand up. Good. And we also have remote participation, so my colleague Judy, also from the World Economic Forum, is monitoring the chat in case there are any questions or comments from online participants. Great.
Hello. Thank you for this panel. It's been really informative. I think it's nice to see all the industry folks in the conference in one panel. My name is Andrea Vega. I work in tech policy and news integrity. So my question is, being here at a multi-stakeholder conference, some of you talked about the kind of engagements and outreach you do with civil society and academia, but a key tenet of digital trust, as named in the panel, and to create a safe experience, is to ensure that the information you host is factual, true, and thus not harmful. And often promoting that quality information comes from working with journalists. So can you each talk about your approach to, one, hosting news online, and two, the kind of partnerships that you have with news organizations and media, if any, that inform your work? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can collect a couple of questions and then address everything at the end. We cannot hear very well from here, right? So I hope we can address all your questions, but we are checking on the screen. That's why you will see us looking at the screen to make sure we are understanding your questions. So please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Vinicius Fortuna. I'm a software engineer, and I lead at Google. And I lead the Internet Freedom team at Jigsaw. And this is my first IGF. One thing I noticed is that I don't actually see lots of engineers here. I also don't see product managers. But those are the builders. And we can't have multi-stakeholder governance without having the builders in the room. So I would like to, what we see is legal and policy. Yeah. So I'd like to ask all our companies to can we please bring the builders to this conversation? And I know that big tech engineers are well paid and live in a bubble quite often, and they're not even thinking about these issues. But so our companies need to proactively put the incentive in place to bring those people into the conversation. And at the same time, remove the hurdles. I know at least one company here that banned their engineers and product people from going to a lot of these events in the past. We used to have very good and productive conversations, and I would love to see that more. I think this will help having more productive conversation with everyone, and also build trust on your companies and our companies. I think it will help everyone.
Thank you very much. I think Chef can quickly address that.
I love that question. I'm just going to give you a quick response. It brought a smile to my face because I come from a policy background, but now I'm surrounded by engineers at AWS. Last year, it was 2 IGFs ago, but it was really a year and a half ago in Kyoto, I made sure to bring the senior engineer on my team to IGF because she kept asking, what is our policy team doing? And I brought her there. And the first day or so, she was so confused because she went to these panels and she wanted to have A, B, C leads to solution D, E, F, and she didn't understand, how this worked. But by the end of the time, she met a bunch of people and she really could understand better. This is part of the policy-making process. But I couldn't agree with you more, and I brought her because I wanted to help close that gap. And I think that's important at conferences like this, but also in companies. So when I was at TikTok, we worked very hard to not just hire people from Meta. We needed to hire people. We needed to hire people who had really good experience. You might be the only ones there. No, we had a lot of people there, and they were great because they knew the history of trust and safety operations. But we wanted to, so they were high caliber. Everyone wanted them. But we also hired people from academia, from media, and of course we needed engineers. But you're absolutely right, there needs to be more of that. Now, if you interact with the ICANN world here, you do start to come across a lot more technical people. But I couldn't agree with you more, so let's just think about ways that we can do that at this conference and elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. Removing the barrier inside the company is also important because, as you all know, engineers and policy people are very separated.
Very true.
Thank you.
Thank you. being very mindful of time. We only have 4 minutes and there are 3 people waiting to ask questions. So I kindly ask you to be very brief and then we will try to address the first question and also your question. Thank you very much.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Beatrice. I am a lawyer by training, but I'm also an assistant professor in law, so that's kind of the perspective I'm coming to the conversation. One of the things that I think Peter mentioned at the beginning, but I also kind of referring to what Rafaela was saying, is kind of this perception of perhaps a conflict between safety and innovation, but a lot of what we hear in terms of kind of the conversation is perhaps a tension between innovation and regulation. So kind of, oh, regulation is going to hamper innovation or prevent innovation. I'm a firm believer as a lawyer, but also kind of studying regulation, that regulation can foster innovation. And we are seeing now kind of a new wave of regulatory efforts from countries like the EU, but also the UK, where I'm based, trying to kind of foster online safety through regulation. So I'm interested in hearing from you in terms of whether and to what extent these new regulatory frameworks, these laws have been pushing you towards different forms of innovation. The Online Safety Act is one of them, but I think we have other examples. Is it kind of an enabler, a constrainer? Is it setting a floor, a ceiling? How do you see regulation in this space of kind of internal policy? Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Nermeen Salim, a Secretary General of Creators Union of Arab, a CASA consultative status with UN. First of all, I would like to express my sincere to the distinguished speakers for their insightful presentation. Allow me to raise a question stemming from a news article I recently came across regarding an AI application. While I do not specialize in technical dimensions of AI, I will do the best to convey my concern. The article discussed a machine learning based system that in its practical application appears capable of developing data independently without human input. In some instances, the system reportedly acted beyond human control, no longer limited to the data it was trained on, even surpassing intended human directives. My question is, doesn't this present a significant risk that all professionals and stakeholders of AI field must seriously consider? And the other one, in your expert opinion, what measures can be taken to address such concerns and ensure the responsible AI development? Thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Luis Adrian. I come from Costa Rica, and I am a professor right now. However, I am former Minister of Science, Technology, and Telecommunication of Costa Rica. And my concern is simple. When we have digital trust, we can have safely innovation. However, my concern is how can we involve more the public policymaker and the government? Because if you don't involve all of them, the response to make more safely is to generate regulation. And the over-regulation can produce that we stop the innovation. So I would like to have your point of view. Thank you very much.
Okay, I know we are running out of time and we have questions about partnerships and involving more the public policymakers. We have questions about regulations and also about responsible AI development. So I ask to my panelists if you want to pick up on any of these points because we need to wrap up the session now as soon as possible. Renato, you can start.
Why don't I take the first question, because I took that to be primarily directed to misinformation on the platform, which is something that is of concern to journalists, but also to all of our users who have told us they want to see more context around certain types of content. We have a policy directed to misinformation and harm, and under this policy, we will remove content that is false when we determine that it could present real-world safety risks to people. And this is an area that started off as a relatively small subset of content on the platform. During COVID, it became much larger. That continues to be a policy that is on the books and that we inform regularly with input from local people on the ground. We also have policies directed to providing the type of context that I mentioned. Traditionally, we have worked with third-party fact checkers. We continue to work with 3 PFCs outside the United States. In the United States, we announced earlier this year that we are going to be moving to a different crowdsource model, which has a lot of virtues to it in terms of the way that observations about the truth or falsity of content are reported, and we're hoping that this system will be more broad-based, more legitimate, and also more scalable. There's a lot more to be said about that. I know there's a very robust conversation about it, but I'll leave it at that. Community notes in the United States and third-party fact-checking remains in place around the rest of the world.
Thank you. Yeah. We can have 1 or 2 more minutes, so yeah. Val,
great, I'll be real fast. Like Meta, TikTok has a robust misinformation policy framework. We also do a lot of media literacy to make sure that our community is receiving information with a discerning eye, and we collaborate with fact checkers in order to create that content. So it's a pretty robust system, and then we also obviously have a lot of entities presenting news, from citizen journalists, so-called, to established news organizations, and we work closely with them to make sure that that content is in line with our guidelines. Regarding the point around building engineers and product to these meetings, we actually have a network of 10 safety advisory councils around the world and a youth council, and we always bring our product people to those meetings because they are amazing opportunities for them to hear from outside experts and integrate that knowledge directly into their work every day. So full support for that idea. It's something we practice regularly. On regulations, the thing that we have found to be, I think, helpful in how we think about innovation is the risk assessments. They're challenging, they can be annoying in some respects, but they are also good opportunities to rethink about how you approach that work and that safety work, and I think they've pushed us. And finally, on AI and responsible development, we have published our responsible AI principles, which guide our work on AI development. You can find them on our website, and I think they guide our work every day there. So something that we take very seriously and will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Renato, final words.
Real quick, yes, over here. I've always wanted to work with engineers. So even in my previous organization, the privacy team which I managed was very siloed: privacy, legal, privacy policy, privacy engineering, and so on. We put them all together. So at a certain point, I'm a lawyer, and I had 10 privacy engineers reporting to me and working together. I had to find a translator. In my new organization, we started to do the same. So it didn't work like we were not speaking the same language at a point. When we started to really work together, bridging that gap, we started to understand the language of the others and building better product because of that.
Yeah.
Very quick. And I'm not sure if that's the best closing, but AI is already smarter than us, right? And it's just getting smarter and smarter. We already know this, like the whole AI community is already trying to address the problem of going to this breakthrough. And 3 things I wanted to say about this is the things that we have already using to deal with this is internally is number 1, governance. Number 2, what we call model alignment. And number 3, which is the most important one to address the question from the article, is always having human in the loop. I'm happy to go deeper into this. We don't have more time. But yeah, just to say that it will be very hard for us to leave a room in the near future and think that we are smarter than AI around there.
Thank you, Rafaela. Thank you, everyone. we need to follow this conversation. So I think we have seen how important continuing the conversations about safety is, and I'm hearing very loudly that we need to break silos, not only within the companies, within teams, and within the different communities from AI, from digital safety, and also build more partnerships with civil society organizations, with other organizations, and also including users' perspective as much as possible. So with that, I will close the session. I really want to thank all the panelists. I also want to thank the IGF and the business track for offering us this space. Yep, thank you very much for being here as well.
Photo, yes.